The significant sacrifices made by the Soviet Union in handling the Chernobyl nuclear power plant nuclear leak incident in 1986, as opposed to the approach taken by present-day Japan in the Fukushima nuclear power plant leakage accident, which reflects a willingness to sacrifice the human ecological environment for national interests, demonstrate fundamental differences in the choice of interests between socialist and capitalist countries. Related video screenshot: why did the Soviet Union spend 500,000 lives to save the world in disaster, while Japan is harming the globe? Although the Soviet Union had already embarked on the path of bureaucratic capitalism in the 1980s, it was still constrained by public ownership and socialist ideology. It had not departed from the moral track of socialism. The principles followed during the handling of the nuclear leakage incident at that time were consistent with the ethical principles depicted in China's model revolutionary opera Harbor. Both adhered to the principle of self-sacrifice for the greater good, the principle of subordinating individual interests to collective interests, and the principle of placing human interests above all else. The essence of socialism lies in the eradication of private ownership and the establishment of public ownership, the elimination of elite politics in favor of mass politics. This transformation seeks to fundamentally change the logic of individual superiority over the collective established by private ownership, and replace it with the logic of the collective being superior to the individual. This alteration shifts the sequence of choices from individual family class state humanity to humanity state class family individual. The Soviet Union's approach to the Chernobyl nuclear leak followed the latter sequence, whereas Japan's current handling of nuclear contaminated water adheres to the former principle. Prior to the era of reform and opening up, heroic figures like Dong Kanrui, Qiu Xiaoyun, Lei Feng, and Zhao Yulu willingly sacrificed their youth and lives for the liberation of humanity. They followed the logic of human society. In contemporary China, people are willing to disown even their own parents for the sake of money. Brides and grooms often enter the bridal chamber only after drafting divorce property division agreements. This shift demonstrates a logic reminiscent of animal societies. Not only have general members of society lost the moral essence between individual and collective choices, but even the red classics that inspire the pursuit of noble ideals have been stripped of their moral foundation in serving human interests. For instance, the ballet The Red Detachment of Women has replaced Marx's classic motto "The proletarians have nothing to lose but their chains. They have a world to win" with the phrase "organizational discipline." This transformation turns the inspirational spirit of sacrificing everything for the cause of proletarian and human liberation into a shared rule of compliance, effectively reducing the Red Detachment of Women to a group with no distinction from the bandits of Mount Weihu, as both emphasize organizational discipline. Through the devoid of moral organizational discipline, we have forcefully incorporated capitalism's moral norms that prioritize money and individual interests. Roles of benevolence and malevolence have been morally swapped between figures like Nembatian and Wu Qianghua, Huang Shiren and Zir, turning entrepreneurs like Nembatian and Huang Shiren into the pillars of reform, while ordinary laborers like Wu Qianghua and Zir become its subjects. The iron rice bowls of their roles as enterprise owners have been shattered, along with the socialist welfare system, replaced with extreme and backward labor practices like the 996 and 007 schedules, and exploitative labor dispatch systems that even many capitalist countries hesitate to implement. When China's privatization reform took a path not towards modern capitalism like Russia's, but rather towards early-stage capital accumulation, the moral foundation built over thousands of years in society collapsed. Aside from financial incentives, people no longer actively adhere to any other constraints. They no longer recognize the interests of others apart from their own. Counterfeit and shoddy products became synonymous with Chinese goods. Deception and manipulation became fundamental attributes of Chinese commercial society. Harmful additives and toxic foods pervaded the entire Chinese food industry. Despite the efforts of figures like Ren Zhengfei and Dong Mingzhu to restore traditional reputation to Chinese goods, the power of role models is immense. When over 99% of the market is filled with fake Maotai liquor, and it becomes the most valuable and expensive stock in China, no one, except for the naive, believes in morality anymore. The sole moral principle upheld by society is as long as I can survive, even if the world is in chaos, a principle criticized for centuries in capitalist morality. It is precisely due to this moral shift in socialist giants like China and the Soviet Union that the previously scorned value of money has made a comeback, driving capitalism in the late 20th and early 21st centuries into a glorious era, resurrecting the logic of individual interests above collective interests that had already been vilified. Once again, this logic has become the prevailing value in the capitalist world, and the slogan "one should live for oneself" echoes throughout the world. Thus, Japan's act of discharging nuclear contaminated water into the ocean, a crime against the survival environment of humanity. The silence of Western countries led by the United States in response to this crime, and the United Nations' tacit acceptance of this crime in violation of human interests, all find their root cause in this fundamental reason. Many people online fail to comprehend why the supposedly blue civilization countries of America and Europe would support Japan in releasing nuclear contaminated water into the ocean. In fact, for years, we have been providing answers to this question. We have long emphasized that the most prominent feature of the 21st century is the unification of the elite classes across different countries, forming a unified global elite class. The world's capitalists have united ahead of the workers of the world, unite, call, and the international elite class's interests far exceed those of their own nations, let alone the interests of humanity as a whole. Particularly in the present day, the primary interest of the elite class in America, Japan, and Europe is the disintegration and extermination of the Chinese nation. For this goal, they not only sacrifice their respective national interests but also disregard human interests. This is the fundamental reason why capitalist countries like America and Europe maintain consensus on Japan's nuclear contaminated water disposal. Ultimately, this is determined by the capitalist system. Without a change in the capitalist system, as technology, especially biotechnology, rapidly advances, humanity may face an even more severe biological pollution than nuclear contamination, with consequences surpassing the former catastrophe.